Thank you for joining us for today's Growing Forward webinar. We have assembled a great panel of vineyard managers who are going to talk to us about their experience implementing new technologies in the vineyard over the past few seasons. There's some very interesting technologies there, so I hope you'll stick with us. The webinar is pre-recorded, but the speakers are with us in the live chat, so if you have questions along the way, you can pop them into the live chat and they'll answer them there. Also, if you notice any of our editing magic along the way, you can leave a comment below to get bonus points. Before we get started, I also want to thank our sponsors, without whom we couldn't produce these webinars for free. So thank you very much to American Vineyard Foundation, Trident Fence, and WiseCon. We very much appreciate your support. Okay, well now, I would like to say welcome to our panel today, who so graciously agreed to join us and talk a little bit about the different technologies that they've been using in their wine growing over the last few seasons. We have Tony Chapman, who's the Senior Director of Wine Growing at the Dunham Estate, Ryan Mayer, the owner and operator of Mayer Vineyard Management, Matt Merrill, the General Manager of Mesa Vineyard Management, and Patrick Riggs, the Vice President of Viticulture at Jack Neal and Son Vineyard Management. So thank you all for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you.
So you guys you're doing a lot of interesting things. So we have a list of things to get through. But one of the things that I know that several of you are doing that I would like to start talking about are these spore trappings. So Patrick, I know you've been doing these for a few seasons now. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what made you get into doing that and how it's been working for you?
Sure, of course. Well, we've been doing it for a few years. We have 4 or 5 of them that are in service at the moment at different, client vineyards that we manage. And the impetus for us is it's really one part of the disease triangle for powdery mildew, right? It has the ability to affect how we spray, when we spray, so we can do a better job, right? Potentially spend less money, but also really, do a better job and be more accurate with what we're doing. So we're not just relying on a schedule. It's kind of the next piece in my mind after the development of the Gubler-Thomas powdery mildew model.
And so when you implement this in your workflow, how does that affect what you're doing? Are you seeing like some real changes in how it affects how you treat?
Yeah, we look at it from two different kind of avenues. The first one is as an early warning system, right? So we have that knowledge because it's capturing spores of powdery mildew specifically in the air. So now the technology is going to capture those spores before I'm going to be able to find them. Or in some cases, we're usually not really looking for powdery mildew actively until really fruit set. So it's going to give me information to say, are there spores around? Is powdery mildew around? We historically had assumed it always was, right? This is kind of one of the revelations that spore traps have shown, that in some vineyards, in some places, and it varies every year, that powdery mildew is not necessarily always present. So again, first comes early warning system. I know if it's here or if it's not. And then we can decide what to do with that information. So for example, let's say I have got some data from the spore machine. Let's say I got some today and I have a scheduled spray on Monday, right? So I have a choice now do I want to add an eradicant to that spray because I have green tissue and there's a number of spores present floating around the vineyard, right? That's a decision point right there. So I can be proactive when there, or I can say, hey, there's no spores present. Well, maybe I can move that spray to Wednesday and push that spray interval, or, and these small things add up. Obviously the early warning part is if it's there, I can potentially avoid it from becoming a problem right? It's almost like an insurance. And then if there's none present, I have the potential to lengthen my spray intervals, which could lead at the end of the year to one less spray, two less sprays. I know people that are using this technology who have, cut out three or more fungicide applications, right? And that's kind of a measure of, and that might not be every year. It might be this year they can do that, and last year they couldn't, and maybe next year they could do it again, and right, it's variable. But it gives you that opportunity to make those adjustments with, really good information, right? Is the pathogen present, right? This is the main part of the disease triangle. You need the pathogen, right? You need the host, the grapevine, and the environment has to be conducive. Now, of course, we all have grapevines, so the host is there. The environmental information we get from functionally the Gubler model, the disease model, and our backgrounds in plant pathology, et cetera. But we never really had a good sense of, is the pathogen there? And this can tell us. So, or for example, the opposite. Let's say, oh my goodness, it looks like I wasn't planning on spraying and maybe I need to move up, right? To make sure I'm protected. Maybe I have to move up a spray, or like I said, maybe I can add a little Eradican in because, if I'm spraying already, like I said, because the cost of that spray isn't really the material, it's the tractor time, the tractor and the operator. Adding one little extra thing to the spray mix doesn't really have a big cost factor in that. And if it helps me way down the road, prevent infection, which would lead to quality problems, and then functionally more cost, then all the better, really.
Yeah. And Tony, I think you've been using these as well, right?
Yeah, I started in 2020, so I've been using it for a number of years now. We're working with two different spore monitoring companies, Root Applied Sciences, which their methodology is basically using PCR testing to look at populations. And then I trialed Scan-It last year, mainly at our Anderson Valley vineyard, which is just farther for me to get to. I'm not there as frequently. Different technology there. They're using basically microscopic imaging, and it's autonomous, which is nice. I don't have to go and collect the samples myself. But yeah, Patrick did a really good job covering that. I've seen a lot of benefit out of it. I feel like spore monitoring kind of splits the room a lot of the time on people's what they think the value really is. For me, like simply in low pressure years, I'm able to reduce my sprays, and in high pressure years, I feel pretty confident that I'm not overspraying. So it's just another tool to have. I've been really happy with it. For us, I think we do a lot of spray trials, and so having this technology and comparing what materials we're using and how that's reducing populations during the growing season has been really important to us. And then also we'll do a lot of analysis prior to fermentation starting to see kind of what microbial activity is in our fermentations, and tying that kind of side back to what we're spraying in the vineyard, I think is pretty cool as well.
If somebody was asking you about, starting to use this, are there any things you would caution them about, or have them think about before they started doing this?
I would say I think the technology is improving and getting better. I think that a lot of these spore companies are really pushing towards integrating some AI capabilities. So I would say it's getting better. That being said, I think starting right now with the technology where it's at allows you to kind of learn and integrate this into your farming and growing system. I would just caution that you don't only go off of the results that you're getting from the spores. Definitely look at the powdery mildew index. Definitely, keep scouting, being out in the vineyard, seeing there, looking at weather conditions, looking at canopy, humidity, temperatures, everything else. Like I said, and Patrick stressed this as well. It's just really another tool to have, and if you use it properly, it can be a really efficient tool. But it's not a silver bullet. For us, like a lot of people, we've kind of came away with the conclusion that we don't really need to spray in April. Like we don't really need to have, we don't have that high pressure. We don't have those population numbers. Most of the time we're able to kind of eliminate spraying in April and then just starting in May. That being said, we're constantly out there looking early season, seeing what's out there, looking at weather forecasting, even seeing what the pressure was last year to see how many potentially spores have overwintered. So a lot of factors to consider, but it's a great tool to have in your toolkit.
Patrick, have you been using both PCI and scanning as well?
We have just used predominantly used the DNA based and PCR method, and I would reiterate what Tony said is I know people who are using the technology and they're using it like all out, right? Like their entire programs are based on it. Um, Being a vineyard management company, I have clients, and I honestly, I'm not willing to take that risk. So, in that regard, we use everything we can think of, right? We use that to inform us to make better decisions, right? So, I would say if you were getting into it, you have your program, and then just check your program versus the numbers to say, well, wait a minute, the best one is in a warm, dry year and you have no spores present and you're doing a spray. Like, did I really need to do that? Maybe you're not comfortable cutting the spray off completely, but maybe you're willing to go, hey, I'm gonna extend it a few days, right, before I go back. And even that adds up, right? And we haven't used the scan it. We had one client that tried it, and I would say it was probably generation one a few years ago. Interesting. We I was concerned, or our concerns with that at the time, which I'm sure it's better now, was it's microscopy based. So does the machine really validate? It's looking what a spore looks like. So the question is, can it differentiate between a powdery mildew spore, right? Of grape, a grape powdery mildew spore, and say a powdery mildew spore of rose, or and we couldn't really get an answer for that. But again, that was several years ago. And at the time we were like, this isn't solid enough, and we liked the PCR DNA based metrics.
Matt, I don't recall. Are you guys using the spore traps as well?
We do on a few different ranches, kind of trying them out, but we're going to be using a lot more this year. But it's also learning about them and seeing if we can use them to save some money on sprays, but also an indicator of where mildew is present, and we need to make sure we're on top of things as well. So it's still kind of a learning experience with those for us.
Mm. Yeah, that brings me into another part of the conversation that was looking at that. So when you start pulling in these new technologies and solutions and testing them out, you said you two, I think you said you're starting with. What are you guys' approach to which kind of all these fancy new things you jump into? I know, Patrick, you've got some strong feelings about what kind of technologies you are willing to grab a hold of and try, and what your approach is to that.
Yeah, I mean, we're have to be, everybody else here is too, of course, responsive to the client, right? And whoever they're working for. One of the things that we think of is can a technology address an existing gap, right? A hole or a gap in what we know and how we take action. The things that we look to do, they kind of have to affect us or allow us to change what we're doing. If they don't, or if they don't seem to, then to us it's of limited value. So for example, there's technology or sensors, let's say, that can validate, right? I call them validation technologies. And those are great, but we've seen technology where it's basically telling me I'm doing what I should be doing, right? Or it agrees with me that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So in that case, that's great. It's a great pat in the back. But do I really need that year in and year off every year? Probably not, right? If I'm already doing and it says, yeah, you're in the window of where you're supposed to be. So we really wanted to drive how can we make a better decision, change something we're doing. And of course, we've mostly spoken about, or so far, about like just technology, but this same approach can be due with a new material, right? That might come out that you might want to use in the organic world, right? We are almost always looking for additional new materials we can use, or even, like an implement, right? Tractor for undervine weed control or whatever it is. And we also think it's got to be user friendly, right? If you have a technology, even if the data is like, wow, this is pretty cool, pretty interesting, but if you're jumping through 4 or 5 hoops to make it work for you, that just, I want to say I don't have the time for that, right? I mean, maybe for 1 or 2 seasons I do, and then it's just like, no, it has to lend itself to easily saying, okay, we're going to change this or do this or that sort of thing. That's kind of our approach. And then typically based on science that we can at least root in something we understand, or there's, research papers that can support okay, this makes sense. And this appears to be applicable in our system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So, following up on that, going back to the spore traps and the usability, user friendliness of this, is this technology that's easy for you guys to use?
Generally, yes. Right. I mean, the system that we have, which is root sciences, is twice a week. You have to collect the spore sample bottle and basically drop it off. Right. Which, if you had lots of them, I could see that being a pain in the butt, or a challenge, should we say, instead of that. I know that they're working on a service-based model so that growers don't necessarily have to do that. But aside from that, it's pretty user-friendly. There isn't really, that's really the biggest hurdle, is having somebody go collect it or collect them, because it's multiple sites, and then, either send them to the lab or a drop box. For us, there's a drop box. So that's really the biggest issue that we've had, hurdle, so to speak.
What about you, Tony? Is your approach to trying out new things, you've even been doing this a little bit longer, is that similar kind of thought process you have, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's important to always kind of keep tabs on the new technology that's coming out. I think it's really interesting. Like right now, it's such an exciting time to be in agriculture because tech is really integrating with this industry at a rate that it never has before. So I think, I'm always interested to hear what's out there and what's new. But at the end of the day, like, I'm looking to see how is this technology going to help? Like, what are the objectives I want to work with this technology? And then how can I measure the outcomes? And, if you're not able to really measure the outcomes, if you're not able to have a clear clear results at the end of the growing season, then you probably don't need to be wasting your time, wasting your money, wasting your resources. There's in the past been technologies that I've worked with. I used to do a lot of overhead imaging, and I don't do a lot of that anymore for a few different reasons. One, just because like a lot of the sites now I know, and you're not gaining a lot of those insights anymore. But yeah, I mean, I think, I'm always looking at, new implements for the tractor, what could be more efficient, what could, decrease compaction, what are our vineyard operators going to appreciate working with more. And so we'll demo things, we'll try things, we'll try new softwares. We're working with a new software company this year called Sectimentor, to kind of keep all our, I guess, regenerative organic practices in one kind of place, and then kind of have some help us kind of measure some of these outcomes that we're looking for. But yeah, as soon as something's not working within your system, as soon as you're kind of questioning like what is the value of this product, then you probably need to reevaluate it. And it's something we reevaluate every year. The spores for us has been, I feel like, pretty impactful, and something that we've thought we've had like pretty good, not just like ROI on, but also like I think it's helped us grow higher quality grapes and ultimately make higher quality wine. So it's something that that we continually work with. Patrick, are you doing anything with botrytis monitoring with root or just powdery?
Not at this point because, honestly, 99% of our fruit is Cabernet, right? I mean, and the Sauvignon Blanc I do have pretty much never gets botrytis. So,
Yeah.
it's not, I mean, I have a little bit of Chardonnay, but it's mostly, say mid and up valley, and it doesn't, you know.
Yeah. Oh man, Chardonnay without,
Yes, I'm not in Carnero.
and that's rare. And that's rare. Yeah, so like I don't do it with root, but that is one of the benefits to scan it, is it's just included in their service because of the microscopic imaging. And I mean it's pretty interesting. I would say it doesn't like nearly affect our spraying really at all, but I think just like gaining that insight's a little bit interesting. And it's a site that we don't typically have botrytis pressure anyways, but it'll be interesting. Like we've only used that 1 year. It was like pretty low. It'd be interesting to see over the next couple seasons if like that changes a lot or if it's marginal.
Well, or how is it compared to the root science ones too? Like,
Yeah, I've never done the root science ones just because I mean honestly I haven't wanted to spend the money for that analysis when I don't think it's really going to move the needle on what we're
yeah.
doing. But yeah, that would be interesting. So this year I actually am putting like almost side by side a root and a scannet sensor, and I want to see a little head to head
What's
case.
the difference? Yeah. Yeah.
So I was hoping that they would give those ones to me for free for science, but nope.
Yeah, no surprise there. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I know some people who have them and they rely on them, those traps way more than I would even remotely be comfortable with, right? Like that, well, we sprayed 4 times this year because I'm just like, oh my gosh. And that's great for them, but from a vineyard management's perspective, is I can't take that risk. Where they're winery based and they're like, yeah, we're gonna go for it and we're gonna save a ton of money. And
Yeah, because there's still a lot of variables. Like if
yes,
the vacuum shuts down for a number of hours at night, if you didn't get enough charge on the solar panel or something like that, if like something's impacting like the airflow movement through there, yeah, there's a lot to consider. Right. Well, I mean, there's a lot. Like that's one thing I like. It's not like the sensors like differentiate between that.
no,
So like we're
no.
able, yeah.
Well, too, or like, if you rely on it like crazy, are you gonna lose your like? Would a finance person want you to lose some of your budget? And then you have a bad year following, and you're like, now I need to spray 8 times or 9 times when I was spraying for the last 2 years. And then, like there's also that consideration, I guess. I mean, I don't know if that happens, for the people that are really, really relying on it. But um, um, like I said, even as an early warning system, I think to me is the I mean, I've done it where, hey, there's spores here. It's not a lot, it's coming up on where I would think we would start to see mildew, and I have a spray next week. Like, it's easy to throw 2.5, 3 pounds of Caligreen into something. It's already the spray event is already scheduled. It's on the calendar. The tractors are there. Throwing in an eradicant just as insurance. I mean,
Yeah.
that costs almost nothing,
Mhm.
right? And even if you're not even at, saying, oh, I'm going to do it at, half the max label rate or something like that. Like, well, seemingly that's a contact kill. So anything that is there may be growing in small, that you can't see, you can't find, that you are going to maybe get a little kill and, help yourself out later. So, I mean, I think that's, for us, that's a big part of it. Even if it only saves me maybe one spray because I'm only lengthening interval, like that's still to me, when you get powdery mildew and it's a problem, it's really, really hard to clean it up and get it back to where it should be. So,
Yeah.
Matt, you guys are just getting into it. What are your like thoughts and concerns about when we started, I didn't change the first year based on what my program was, right? Or Matt rather. Um, um, I kept my program the same and just watched, right? And then as I became more comfortable, then I started to tweak my programs, based on the data. I guess, what are you guys thinking down there in the Central Coast? I mean, your pressure, um, in some of those areas, Monterey, Salinas is off the charts, like all
Right.
the time.
Right. So I think same as you, similar spray program in the past, and then just kind of analyze how it goes. And so if we see pressure picking up and the traps are picking that up and showing that, then we know to keep on pedal to the metal. If there's anything we might be able to reduce, it might be the drier areas, Paso, where we don't have as much pressure, and maybe we can extend things a little bit. Also, sometimes it's handy if there's equipment that maybe some equipment breaks down, and how fast do we got to rush parts to get it to fix, or
Mm.
could we wait an extra few days to get a tractor and sprayer from this other ranch kind of moved over? And I think it can help with some of those decisions. And so if the sport traps are showing that it's real heavy and there's a lot of pressure, then maybe we rush things or we get things moved around a little faster than if it shows that everything's real clean and the PCAs are also saying things look real clean, then maybe we can stretch it out a bit. Uh, it's all kind of an experiment, and we're taking it as that. And the more we use it, I think the better we'll get with it. Use it in the future.
How do you plan, Matt, on like pairing, I guess, the your UV light kind of equipment with the spore monitoring?
And that's the other part of it is, yeah, we are pairing it a lot, I guess.
Cool.
A lot of the same areas we have the UV trials going on. We also are putting up these spore traps to kind of confirm what's happening out there. And so, yeah, I think those, because sometimes you may say, yeah, the UV did great or your sprays did great, but maybe there's not a lot of pressure anyways. So that also can help us confirm that what we're doing is working. The UV confirm that there is spores out there and it is knocking the pressure back and it's able to keep up with it. So I think it's kind of help on both sides, confirm that it's helping, but also make sure we keep up on things and we're vigilant as well.
Nice.
Great. Matt, on those UV lights, how long you been using those now?
So I think we started using them originally with Castro Sellers. So it was Castro Sellers was one of those clients that likes to be a little bit more on the cutting edge of newer technology to a point, but especially reduced chemicals, organic philosophies, regenerative. And so they were kind of a natural fit since the owners were interested in it. And once we kind of negotiated what the pricing would be, we went ahead and started experimenting in a few low pressure vineyards. And then over time, we spread that over to more acres to higher pressure sections of the west side of Paso Robles. And then also now other clients that are also interested in kind of seeing about using autonomy, also electric, less diesel, less carbon footprint. And so we've added to where we're, I don't know, close to 1,000 acres now, I think. But the main goal for us is to reduce chemicals, but also change, for me, I kind of like the idea of changing the mode of action, having something completely different where we have some resistance in some high pressure areas to the conventional sprays that we're using, or even the organic sprays in the organic sections. So I kind of like the idea of something completely different. But it's all an experiment, and we're still kind of working through it. A lot of similarities to spray coverage as far as the bigger, denser the canopy, it seems like the more difficult it is for the UV to work. So we've had to do maybe a little bit more leafing, a little bit more shoot thinning than we have on some maybe higher tonnage blocks that we have in past robles. But on the other side of things, in Santa Maria Valley, we already do all that stuff, and so in that area, we're trying to do more of a hybrid because the pressure is so high that we're doing a reduced sprays, but also using the robots to go through as well. So it's all still kind of experimental, and but we like the results that we've been seeing so far. And so every year we kind of learn a little bit more, and then the following year we kind of implement some new procedures that we learned from the previous year.
Are there any particular things that you would caution or advise someone about if they were thinking of trying these UV robots?
Well, you got to make sure, with anything that's electric, you have the right amount of electrical outlets and power somewhat nearby is obviously very helpful. And if you don't have that, you're going to have to add it. So we've been doing that, or we've been doing areas that are close to where we already have wells and things like that. And then just how are you going to be able to watch it? We have people working at night, but if you have to have guys just devoted to watching the robots, then that starts to bring the costs up. So we're currently working to make the anything autonomous really truly run more autonomous, where there's hopefully nobody out there at some point, and it sends you a beat indication text or something that it needs help. Otherwise, you're kind of just paying for other people to be out there to babysit the autonomy, and that kind of defeats the purpose of the whole thing. So whether it's with the robots for those or with autonomous tractors, it's kind of a similar thing. The more autonomy and the less people that have to be involved, it seems like that's when the costs really come down and make it more feasible.
Matt, yeah, I have tons of questions. Some of them we talked about
Mhm.
in the first round. So I mean, some of them will be a repeat, but if I can, just
Yeah.
we talked about from the research, the nighttime hours thing, like it's you don't have the whole night. It's only a certain part of the night, and that changes. I mean, obviously you mentioned this previously, but like, how do you manage that? In your sense of like, do you have any sense of what the trade value is? So, for example, if I have 30 acres and I'm using two sprayers, normal sprayers to finish that in a night, let's say, would I need two of the Thorvald, the UV machines? Would I need three? Would I need four? Right? Like, I'm assuming you're operating on pretty well groomed flat ground. What do you think about the workability on hillsides or even or rolling or like, side slope, right? We have a lot of machines, you put them on side slope and they don't work as well. And then obviously VSP is what it's made for based on, the shape. Um, and you kind of touched on this, we have a lot of where still have VSP. It's often, the double wire, the four canes, right? The double wired, Geo style. So it's pretty dense. Like, do you think that it would work in that, or would you have to end up leafing a lot more? And then there's a lot here. I just wanted to zoom through it. And then you mentioned, yeah, sometimes there's a guy out watching. Was there any thoughts, or did the company like PPE, UV eye protection or anything like that? Just curious because it's, it's something I think about, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, all those things all are factors. But yeah, the PPE they help set up the guy that's out there, but it turns off before they get up close to it.
Okay.
But at the same time, like you're saying, we did start off in the flatter areas, and the robots were a little smaller. And we kind of the first looked at them, and I don't know how well this is going to work, but um, yeah, mostly well groomed areas where the first generation, the new generation's bigger. It
Mm.
has larger batteries, larger wheels, and we're going to test it on some of our steepest stuff this year. And so that's one of the testing points for this year is how steep can we go and rely on it without, the thing getting stuck or flipping over or anything like that. Part of the setup is they go through and look at basically every acre as it goes through to see like, is there side slope? If there is, can the machine adapt a little bit so when it hits that particular section, it adjusts and it can, stay more straight up and not risk tipping over or getting stuck or anything like that. As far as the density, we did some out in East Paso in the Shannon area, and it was high wire. It was literally machine pruned,
Oh, jungle. Yeah.
machine. So I mean, this was kind of almost like a fully machine autonomous block that we were trying it in. Because that's part of it is, well, maybe what if we don't have any people actually driving through any of this vineyard, and now it's all just about autonomous. What can happen, or at least keep the handwork down to a minimum. And so there was a lot of canopy there, a lot of shoots, a lot of spurs, as you know, because it was not clean and tidy. It was a lot in there, and so and they kept up. They kept up pretty darn well. This was the section where we did more of the general 100% UV rather than a hybrid. So the one time we started to get issue was where we did see just a touch of mildew, and it was similar to other areas of the ranch where the conventional even sprays had a few little spots of mildew
Mm.
popping up. But it was also interesting. It was, as you refer, like to the longest day of the year time period. So we're wondering if maybe that had an effect on it to where maybe the robot got stuck and the guy came to work on it and it didn't get going in time. And when it finished its, shift, did it not finish it with enough time to spare before the sun started coming up? And then that
Mm.
kept the mildew from dying off completely. So that is a factor. I kind of like the idea of hedging our bets a little bit and having a few sprays mixed in throughout the year to make sure, you kind of protect from some other things like botrytis and whatnot as well, and getting some material into those clusters and berries before they expand out and block each other out. Another thing I think we can do that we didn't do was go longer, closer to harvest, and I think that would have been beneficial. It sounds like the
Mm.
guys at Bandecito did that to where instead of stopping where you traditionally stop in August to get ready to harvest, there's no reason why you couldn't just keep going because they're not putting materials on that are going to be harvested up with an interval before you go to harvest. So especially with the
Yeah.
rains that we got there mid-September, I think that would have been helpful to run the robots afterwards because we were real close to having it be ripe, but we're also starting to see some rot just barely start to creep up. But we also had wineries that were ready to pick, so there were some tough decisions to be made there. And I think it actually would have been helpful if we would have ran the robots through, and I think that would have done a better job than maybe the way we did it.
Matt, have you like ever analyzed like fruit from like a block that you're running the UV light compared to a block that you're not? I'm just curious if like you've noticed if you did that, if you would have noticed any sort of difference in terms of like phenolics, color intensity, things like that.
Yeah, so far, it seems like based on what Castoral Cellars is telling us, everything seems to be fairly similar. Not really better or worse one way or the other. And
Mhm.
then for other wineries from other ranches that we sell to, they take fruit from different blocks and they'll send us back information, but they seem to all agree that there's no noticeable difference between the two.
Mhm.
So hopefully we make sure that, in some cases it's nice to have a good partner that can separate things out and it's not quite so anecdotal or things get mixed together and you're not quite sure what the difference was. So, but that is the next step, I think, is to really analyze that better than we have been so far.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear follow up on that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right. You guys got any more questions for Matt about the UV? Because otherwise, I would like to switch from light to sound. Um, Ryan, you're the guy out there who's doing sound in the vineyard. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about and what it's about?
Yeah, it's a fun story. It's not something I seeked out. It kind of came to me a few years ago by a gentleman by the name of R. Sheep, whose residence borders one of the many vineyards that I farm. And he came, I was actually on the tractor. He pulls me off the tractor and he says, "Hey, I got a device set up in my backyard that's broadcasting sound waves, musical frequencies into your vineyard. And I just wanted to see if it was okay that I use the sound in the vineyard." And I thought, like I said before when I first met you guys have any, pixie dust for sale? Because the skeptic in me immediately came up, but I thought to myself, no harm in trial. So he continued to play the music with my permission. And interestingly enough, optically, I saw quite a rapid response, especially to the side of the vineyard in which the music was being played from. It was a low vigor side, and the other side was actually a pretty vigorous side. So the contrast between the two, the east and the west side of the vineyard, was already dramatic to begin with. And then, a couple of springs later, I lost communication with him. He came to me and he said, "Hey, what do you think? Do you think this is working?" And this was spring of 2025. And we had been under contract. We were under contract with Everything Farm post Smoke 2020. We were able to sign a lot of 3-year deals in 21 and 22, with almost 60% of our Sonoma County's crop being lost to smoke taint in 2020. So high demand for fruit in 21 and 22. And as those contracts reached maturity and it came time for renewal, the market had basically fallen out. So when he came to me in 24, he asked two questions. He asked me, one, what do you think is the music working? And I said, well, it's invigorated the low vigor side of the vineyard. This is a dry farmed, not fertigated vineyard. The infrastructure was not in place when I began to farm it, and it was too expensive to replace the irrigation infrastructure. And so there's nothing that I was doing to the vineyard to invigorate the vineyard myself. And then he said, "Hey, well, don't spray anything this year. This music, it changes the molecular structure of the vine, and it makes it more disease resilient." And I thought, again, skeptic, but why not be curious about this, especially since it had fallen out of contract. I'd gone to Amici for a few years, and then they didn't renew come the spring of 25. So I said, okay, I'll do my best not to spray, and I threw one dust at it at high temperature, so the dust would volatilize. But other than that, I didn't do anything. And July was the coldest July on record since 2010 and 2011. Extremely high mildew pressure, and this vineyard was completely clean of mildew. And that's when I became a believer. And then I kind of dug deeper into the how and the why, and it's quite simple actually. The vibrations, the wavelets from the music interact with uh, the chloroplasts during photosynthesis, and it synthesizes the light in a much more efficient way and metabolizes it into carbohydrates and glucose, making the vine more efficient. And we talked last time I met you guys. I talked about subatomic physics. Inside of an atom, electrons, neutrons, and protons. Inside of those, bosons, leptons, and quarks. And inside, zooming in farther than that, you've got vibrating light. And that's how all form takes form, is through light vibrations. So the interaction with the sound vibration with the photosynthesis is changing the efficiency of photosynthesis.
It does sound like pixie dust.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's nice is the data points are extremely important, evidence, and scientific proof. So, up until now, we've got just one series of data points, and that's a juice panel that we took on this vineyard last year. And then we've got, some, adoption of the device, throughout 80 acres on the Martinelli, ranches this year, in which they, have their own winery and can isolate the fermentation so that we can retrieve more data points. But interestingly enough, for a dry farmed vineyard that yielded 7 tons the acre, where this music was being played, was disease free. It was harvested on September 17th in a relatively cold vintage, and was harvested at 27 bricks at 3.65 pH, 5.8 TA, and 275 yen. The juice panel numbers were, what's up, buddy? My kids just got home. We're hit ideal benchmarks. And so, like I said, there's not enough data points to prove, but if seeing is believing, and try. The nice thing about this technology is it translates to about $5 an acre for reoccurring. So you set it and forget it. It's got a solar panel. There are some relatively inexpensive impact costs. But the reoccurring costs are $5 an acre annually. So it doesn't hurt to try it. And then it would be fun discussion and potentially something marketable to talk about sustainable farming and to reach the customer and control your costs, because the cost to benefit on this could be potentially outrageous. Because if it just cuts back on 1 or 2 sprays, and it cuts back on less fertilizer usage or less irrigating, that the benefit could be outweigh the $5 of the risk that you're taking by implementing the device. So it's basically a no-brainer from a cost of benefit standpoint.
Ryan, what's the company called that you use?
Yeah, it's called Fidelio. Our sheep is a musician and a mathematician, and his wife actually works for Meta and Mark Zuckerberg. So we're excited about the potential of not just being able to market this device, but also raise the capital to scale it out.
And then, yeah, Ryan, similar question, like, is there, academic published papers that support the concept, the idea, right? I mean, when you first mentioned this to us, I thought of, say, not exactly comparable, but similar, materials that we can spray, like the Harpin protein, the Regalia Lifeguard, that, turn on all the plant defense mechanisms, right? Make the plant hardier. We've used those. They've never been, how should we say, standalones, right? You can see an effect, but you could never use them alone, right? It needed to be something else.
Sure.
So, I mean, obviously, do you know if there's anything, published to say, like, in the academic world about, hey, we did this even in a greenhouse or whatever, or I mean, you might not, and that's totally fine. I'm just curious. You know what I
We
mean?
actually found a company that has a similar concept in France, and they've got about 1,500 vineyards that they're broadcasting music out to through a
Hmm.
device. We are interested in potentially merging with them, or at least opening up a conversation with them, and also getting access to their data points. However, this technology, the design of this technology, differentiates itself from what's on the existing market, and that's through the mathematical frequency. So the octave, or the multiplication of scale. It goes from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, and so on. It mirrors cell division. The cell division also replicates and duplicates itself at the same pattern. So these pitches that are frequent, the frequency of these pitches are designed to make the synthesis more effective. Yeah, so we believe that it's you have to take it's hearsay. You have to take my word for it. But underneath the device, in his backyard, about 25-foot radius around it, were like 6-inch mushrooms coming out of the lawn with huge caps on them. And underneath the device and nowhere else, there's a redwood tree that was dying on the property that had been revitalized over the 4 years that he was playing the music. He's got another species of landscape plant that's supposedly going to break a Guinness Book of World Record. So it's evident the optics PG&E was complaining about trimming the trees back from the lines too frequently on the. So we're excited about, we can see that it's working. It's just proving how it works, because I think skepticism is natural and also healthy, but it's unexamined skepticism that can really prevent us from implementing something that could really work.
Yeah. Any takers? What would it take for you guys to
For
put
five
our
dollars an acre, it's a low risk and high reward. I mean, I'm definitely going to look into it for this season, to put it on trial block or something like that. I mean, it sounds super interesting, and I mean, like Ryan said, $5 an acre. I don't know what kind of technology any of us are using that is around
It's
that
that low,
cost.
yeah.
yeah? Well, certainly sounds interesting. I can't say that I understand how that science works, but I'm very curious to see.
I guess there was one thing to add too. I use this as an example when I met you guys too, was the H2O. It's got two hydrogen molecules and one oxygen, but when vibrating at different frequency, it takes different form. So at a high frequency of vibration, it's vapor, and at a slow frequency of vibration, it's a solid, but it's made of the same composition. And so that's kind of the reach of understanding what's occurring here conceptually.
Interesting. Okay. You guys got any other questions for Ryan about the audio treatments? Or
Keep us
uh,
informed,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to. I
right?
definitely
That's
will. I
that's
definitely
all that,
will.
right?
For
Like,
sure.
I
Yeah.
did have one question. So does this blast constantly, or is this like at intervals? Or
Yeah, it's so there's a high, medium, low setting on the device. One high being every half an hour for 2 minutes, medium being uh, twice an hour for 2 minutes, and once every hour and a half. So every 30 minutes, every hour, or every hour and a half, basically for 2 minutes duration.
okay, great. One other topic that I guess there's a little bit of a bridge here in the conversation about vigor. Tony, I know that you guys have been working with agronomy systems on monitoring your soil health. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we've been working with agrology for a couple years, mainly on a tillage trial that we have. I think there's a lot of dogma around tillage in general, and we wanted to gather some pretty heavy just data points for us to go off of how tilling versus not tilling was affecting our soil health, our vine health, wine quality, trying to take as much data points as possible. So yeah, mainly what we're looking at with the agrology sensors, they test a lot. They do carbon flux mapping, net ecosystem exchange, soil respiration, soil temperatures, canopy humidity, photosynthetic capacity, vapor pressure deficit. I mean, a lot of things that they're gathering. But where we get the value is we'll look at this throughout the whole growing season and see kind of the health of our soil biome post tillage compared to the no-till, what the soils are doing, how they're responding, and we'll follow that all the way through. I think we've gained a lot of great insights from it, especially when it comes to just I think wine quality in general. The no-till keeps the canopy temperatures a lot lower during the growing season, during these high heat events. So we're volatilizing a lot less of these aromatic and flavor compounds. But it's also really interesting to see the soil respiration throughout the growing season on the no-till, where we have really, really high peaks and really high microbial load in our soils. So it's been fun technology to work with. Their software is it's really interesting, and they're investing a lot into it, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun. Something that I've enjoyed, and we're going to keep it going for this next season as well.
That's something that you would be interested in, Patrick. Is that you got any questions about that?
I've met the agrology guys. I like them. They're good people. I think from our point of view, or I guess from mine, that some of that information, I mean, I don't want to say, because of maybe the academic background I have, is somewhat intrinsic for me, right? That some of those numbers you would be getting, I would expect them or might expect them, that it wouldn't necessarily in our case potentially lead to a change in what we're doing. But of course, we're a different system versus an estate winery, right? Of course. And that might also just be due somewhat because of my background. I have a background in soil and a background in microbiology, specifically. So some of those things that, in our industry, people kind of, just in general, are often surprised by. I've kind of like, okay, that makes sense, right? Like,
Yeah, it's been nice in terms of like the trial, because where the trial is, we have really, really heavy clay soils. A lot of
yeah,
people
and carneros, yeah.
you can't farm these no-till. You have to till these soils, and we started it relatively small and we've expanded it out. And like really what we've seen is that, we can farm these soils no-till, not overnight, not with the flip of the switch. And so like having this data for us has kind of guided us into the approach of how to convert, what things we need to do in terms of cover cropping, how we're going to like terminate that cover crop, what's most effective. Do we crimp it? Do we need to mow it? Do we do like a very small, shallow, like friable soil kind of disruption? There's an implement, it's got the worst name ever. It's called the soil pulverizer, but essentially what it's doing is doing the opposite. It's just disturbing that top 3 inches of friable soil. So for us, yeah, I mean, some of this, I think like it's pretty, I guess, theoretical and you would expect it, but at the same time, like seeing like like how different some of these practical implements that you take over the soil, the effects that it has for us, it's given us a lot of confidence, especially early on, to make this conversion. And then also, I mean, to your point, why it makes a lot of sense with the estate model is we can compare these, fermentations and these finished wines in a way that gives us a lot more insight on how our farming practices are affecting wine quality, which is something I don't think a lot of people talk about. I don't think a lot of people, don't they don't talk about it. They might not have an understanding of, what we're doing in the vineyard is really impacting what is in their glass at the table. And so one of the things we did is we fermented three different parts separately in terms of like no till, minimal till, and then kind of more traditional every other row tillage. And we tasted this with Master Wine and some other wine journalists. And like the big takeaway was, wow, all these are very different. And we kept vinification the same way, we harvested at the same time. We really tried to limit that one difference, that one factor to tillage. And yeah, so for sure, I think on a state model, there's some extra value to be gained there. But it depends how you want to use the technology, how far you want to push it and experiment with it.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool that you were able to do that, right? To make and then make it into wine, whereas a lot of times, I mean,
Totally. Yeah.
we'll do differential farming in a block and it's all picked the same, goes on, and we never see it again, right? Like, so,
Yeah.
all that sort of
That
stuff.
would break my heart if
Yeah. Yeah. So, definitely interesting. And that just might be a me thing too, to be honest, right? All of us have different backgrounds and experiences. So it's like, again, this is something for you guys, and we've all talked about this, where you're getting active value from it. And so it makes sense, right? Like
Totally.
Well, guys, I think we're getting towards the end of our conversation here. Do you guys have any final comments you want to make? Any plugs you want to make for anything else exciting you're doing, or any questions for each other? No? Maybe maybe we can finish with a little lightning round here. I'm curious. If you look at like a 5-year time horizon, how widespread do you think these technologies are going to be? So, Patrick, for instance, the sport traps, how widespread is that going to be?
Oh man, well, for me, I hope it continues to grow and quickly. For me, I think it's kind of, as an industry, kind of the next step with disease control, because it fills that missing piece, right? You can imagine a network that covers, your maybe a small AVA where everybody, you're paying as a unit maybe, and hey, here the mildew is coming. It's coming from the north. It's coming, or whatever. That then everybody is informed, and then they're like, oh, we can all make decisions to spray less or use an alternative technology, or maybe use a softer chemistry, right? A softer product, a caution versus a warning or a danger. But it depends. Obviously, the industry is a challenge at the moment. So, in the current market conditions, I think it's a challenge for everybody, right? I hope so, and that it just continues to evolve and get better, and more people, because I think there's value there. And like I said, if you save one spray, and you pretty much, I mean, it's almost paid for itself in that, really.
What about you, Tony? You've been using it the longest.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the next 5 years we're going to see a lot more of these kind of tech companies integrate into agriculture in general, especially the wine industry. I think that spore monitoring specifically is like I said, I think a lot of these companies are integrating AI components to it, and it'll kind of, I think the idea is to give you your own powdery mildew index for your specific block, which could be pretty cool. So I think it's going to be ever evolving. I think the landscaping is going to look a lot different in the next 5 years, and I'm excited to be here for it.
Matt, what about the UV robots? How widespread are they going to be?
Well, I'm hoping they're going to be more widespread and kind of all over. I think there's some other aspects to the robots that might be helpful as well, like some scanning of the vines throughout the growing season. So you can get, virus detection or other things like detection and sent back to you, missing vine counts. Also, maybe multi-function to where they could use a weed laser or something and kind of kill weeds while it's going through the vineyard as well. So I'm hoping it's evolved and more widespread, just as the other guys were saying, and as Patrick was saying, and with the root applied sciences, the spore trapping, we have that kind of set up to where we have them throughout our region, to where there's some other growers that are also using them, and we're going to be kind of on a network where that we can see, other areas where the mildew is starting to come in, or some original pickups, so we kind of know that it's heading our way, or kind of like how we do with some insects, pests and whatnot throughout the year as well. So I think that's definitely a key aspect to that detection that will be helpful in the future as well.
And Ryan, what about the audio blasting the vines? How widely adopted it's going to be? 5, 10 years?
I truly believe that it has the potential to transform agriculture and even make the world a little gentler to live in through the restoration of living organisms. And the potential here to influence plant life is extraordinary. And I think even from a domestic standpoint, once this idea is adopted, that it's true science, that it could be used just to invigorate your landscaping domestically. So I think the potential is very high.
Now, both what you, Tony, and Matt said about technology and a lot of investment, especially on the growing side, coming in here, and there's excitement there. Uh, and this question is for everybody. What's on your wish list for technology?
That's a long
Oh,
list.
Just the highlight.
Oh, geez. I can start. I mean, we demoed this at a place I used to work, or the technology. Wasn't really it, but crop estimation is not statistically significant at all, right? Like, and it's really throwing darts. It would be, it would be great to have some sort of technology that was actually accurate and worked. A few years ago, I would say, well, more than a few now, probably almost 10, we demoed what was using at the time, like facial recognition style camera software on an ATV, to give us, like, they would basically facial recognize clusters, and then it would be crop estimate, right? It wasn't, it couldn't beat me. Basically, we tied, right? When I'm collecting, clusters from, counting clusters on 20, 30 vines, and having a historical cluster weight or something like that. But, something like that would be nice, because everybody wants to be accurate. And if you think about what you're doing with crop estimates, I mean, you're not even in the realm of statistical significance. I mean, not even you're not even in the same state, right? Like,
Patrick, what time of year do you take crop estimates?
now ourselves, or when we were doing this machine?
Oh, I guess both.
They scanned the vineyard like 4 times, right? If I remember correctly, the ATV, they had to drive up and down every single row, and they did it like 4 times in the year. Our approach is pretty straightforward. We're more on the minimalistic side because of the, we start out with our historical, kind of 5-year average is the basis, and then once we get past fruit set and we've done any thinning we would want to thin or do, we'll do a cluster count on a certain number of vines, right? And then we don't really do the lag phase sort of thing. I try to get, if I can, or if I think things are off, is like take some weights at full color. At that point, it's kind of closer to what I think is actually you're going to be getting. And then if you can match that to what you're actually, when the winemaker is actually picking, right? One of the things we have is, I might sell a block to somebody and they're picking at 25. And then 3 years later, it's somebody else and they're picking at 27.5, right? So there's a huge difference there. And we'll kind of do it that way. We keep it pretty minimal because invariably that's a cost. It's a slow process. And then in those years in which, last year was a good one where cluster weights are variable, right? Then more than what they would typically be. I mean, I would love to see a technology that could help bring that accuracy to be more reliable, right? I mean, I think, when you have the same vineyard and it's going to the same client or winemaker and they're picking it at the same, it becomes, of course, a lot easier because it's predictable and you have a little bit more. And then when it's more variable, it becomes or can become a challenge. And then, we have more fruit than what we thought. Okay, what do we do with it? We try to sell it, right? Or hey, we're under, and we're allocated 5 people are buying 3 tons each in this block, right? It's like, okay, nobody likes to be shorted, right? And we don't want to short anybody, but the owner doesn't want like, hey, we got 2 rows of unpicked fruit and, we don't have a home for it at least, or we have to try to find a home and maybe it's not at the same price, or maybe it is, maybe it's more, right? Like, I would love to see a technology that kind of helped us out. And I think there's people trying this with, facial recognition or other AI sort of stuff that I can't say look like they're not there right yet.
Thank you, Patrick. Tony, do you have a final item on your wish list before we close off?
I mean, if I could snap my fingers and have mealybug removed, that would be great.
That's a good one. Yeah.
That is a good one.
That'd be nice. That would be my wish list.
Okay. Matt, do you have a technology on your wish list?
Everything we kind of talked about, just trying different things and, like the yield tracking on a harvester, or like he was talking about the yield estimation sure seems to be rough. And hopefully one of these days we can find something that can really help with that. But that would be real helpful if we can narrow down what we're going to be harvesting and how much and all that would sure help during harvest. That's for sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for all your time today and for sharing all your experience. Really appreciate it. Hopeful to see you again in the future. Maybe next year you've been trying something new. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Great to talk to you guys.
Mhm.
Likewise.
Bye.